Right, Rachel, thank you. Do please, if you can, give us your view of where carbon pricing should go. We've got about 5 minutes. I'm doing it slowly because of the bandwidth problem in this room. Well, let's move on with Jean-Pierre Clamadieu, Chief Executive of Solvay. You are in the chemical business, but you were also speaking for the French industry, the Chemical Association for the industry as well. 3 minutes on where you think things are on carbon pricing at the moment.
Well, first, it's very interesting to when you've listened to the debate yesterday. There is a strong consensus in this audience that carbon pricing is a priority. But past the consensus, we have a lot of different views on what tools, what concept. We've been talking about tax, but carbon prices could also come out of market-based instruments. We have a lot of differences on what type of specific issues has to be dealt with. How does it apply to households? How does it apply to industries? From an industry standpoint, it's clear that putting a price on carbon is the most simple and probably effective way to make sure that in our decision-making process, we take into account the externality that carbon emission represents. In Europe, we've had a system that has been in place for now 6-7 years, the ETS, the European Trading System, which applies to 10,000 factories in Europe and which was based on a market, cap and trade, as we say, which has been effective in giving us the experience on how this works. There's probably debate on how effective it was. At the end of the day, Europe is the only region of the world which will achieve its Kyoto commitment. So probably it means that ETS has played a role. Recession or limited economic growth has probably played also a significant role. But we have a system which works. What we've seen is that this system in Europe is good at giving a short-term price indicator. Should you run a coal-fired power plant? Should you run a gas-fired power plant? Should I stop my chemical plants at some point of time because the carbon price is such that it would be more beneficiary to operate differently? So the system has worked on the short-term price signal. It lacked the ability to give a medium and long-term price signal. Because with carbon at €7 per ton, which is the current market price, it's not a strong incentive to develop the long-term technologies which will allow us to make the long-term investment which will allow us to significantly reduce our emissions. But again, there is one region of the world where such a pricing mechanism has been operating and works for industries. And we should draw some conclusion out of our experience. And it's clear that the EU, taking into account the conclusion of the COP, will make some changes in the systems. We've heard yesterday about what's called the Market Stability Reserve, which is a way to manage better this market. It's a market which lacked what I would probably refer to as a central bank, which could make sure that the big equilibrium are taken into account. Something else which is very important when you create a carbon price mechanism for industries, especially for industries which operate in a global environment, is what we call carbon leakage. The risk that such a system being put in place in a specific jurisdiction will incentivize people just to move their investment out of this jurisdiction and continue to emit. And this is something that the European Union has tried to address through various measures, and it's an area where we need to continue to make progress. There's no reason to move cement plant, chemical plant, refineries from Europe to the Middle East or from Europe to other regions where there's no such constraint, and we have to take this into account. This means that long term, we need to see some convergence in the pricing mechanism for carbon. My dream is to see a situation where China, North America, Europe, and maybe a few other countries will have carbon pricing mechanism which will give the same time of long-term price signal. We are not there yet. I have no expectation that this could come out of Paris, but this is certainly the desirable outcome. One way to achieve that, by the way, is to look back at the project-based mechanism that we've seen in the past Kyoto period, where you can generate credits which can be used in various jurisdictions. I mean, the ability to create international credit and to make them available or usable in various service markets is certainly something which will help for the convergence. But to summarize, yes, we do believe, or I do believe, that carbon pricing is a good way to make carbon part of the economic decisions of company, probably the simplest way. I think we have a model in Europe which has worked reasonably well with some faults that we need to deal with. And convergence, global convergence is key, even if it's a long-term exercise or long-term objective. And then be careful about what we call carbon leakage, which again could create a situation where we are just moving carbon emitters from one region of the world to the others, and this is clearly not something that we want to do. And maybe one last comment, if I may. We are talking about industries, and this is my hat, but don't forget that the key challenge for the next period, the post-COP21, is not just industries. It's all the sectors like housing, transportation, where we need to pass price signals to individuals. And there we need to think of a simple system which will allow individuals to make the right decisions when it comes to insulating their houses or choosing the way they transport themselves.
Jean-Pierre.